This is Dishin Dirt with Gary Pickren, South Carolina's only podcast dedicated to the real estate agent craft. And now, the host of Dishin Dirt, Gary Pickren.
And greetings and welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Dishin Dirt. I'm your often opinionated but rarely wrong host, Gary Pickren, coming to you from the beautiful downtown Columbia, South Carolina offices. This, the last and rainy week of October 2025. Today, we're going to talk about a huge threat to your real estate practice. This is a threat that I believe has been festering for many years, many years, way back before Sitzer Burnett. I think it's been brewing underneath the claims of Sitzer Burnett and could be worse than Sitzer Burnett in the years to come. Of course, I'm talking about dual agency. Before I talk about dual agency and why dual agency needs to go away, not only in South Carolina, but nationwide, as it has in 9 other states already, I'm going to talk real quickly about a short commercial about Blair Cato. Many of our listeners for Dishin Dirt will come up to me and tell me how much they love the show, listen to it all the time, and then they will say, I didn't know you had an office in this particular location. So what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks is focus on some of those locations so that you'll have a better idea of the statewide coverage that Blair Cato has. We're going to focus today on my hometown of Spartanburg. We just moved our office from downtown Spartanburg to the west side of Spartanburg, which is the best side of Spartanburg, 1707 John B. White Boulevard in Spartanburg, also known as Reeville Road. It's the best side of Spartanburg because that's where I grew up. It's a real cool office, got an updated real estate prop tech look to it, not like your old stuffy law office or an old house that's falling apart. It's a really cool vibe with TVs and iPads and all kind of technology. Carson Murray's our lead attorney there in the Spartanburg office. He is a Spartanburg lifer, lived there his whole life. And like myself, he graduated from perhaps the greatest high school in this entire country. Of course, I'm talking about Dorman High School. Carson has been practicing real estate since 2009, and you can send your new orders to neworders@blaircato.com or carson@blaircato.com. We look forward to doing that closing. Send us one. I guarantee you, try us out in Spartanburg. You'll love us. You'll keep coming back forever. Let's talk now about dual agency. Since Sitzer, I have been screaming from the rooftops that this industry has many other risks that are probably greater than what happened in the Sitzer Burnett case. In fact, many real estate experts believe that the next lawsuit that's going to come in this real estate industry will make Sitzer Burnett look like child's play. Sitzer Burnett 2.0, if you will be even worse for the industry than 1.0. Though I have argued that 1.0 hasn't been actually bad. It's probably been good for the industry in some ways. So let's recap what some of the arguments have been about our threats that we're still being exposed to every day. As y'all know, I've talked about broker to broker ad nauseum. Happy to say, because of Dishin Dirt, I've had many brokers come up to me that say they are no longer doing broker to broker because of Dishin Dirt. So I'm happy to say that Dishin Dirt is moving the needle on that. We'll continue to preach that to try to get statewide broker to broker to go away. It is a big problem that will continue to put brokerages at risk. Builder bonuses. Did a couple shows over the past couple of weeks talking about how you can't take these bonuses, how the fact that they're being offered to you is putting you in a bad position with your client. Affiliated relationships, such as these lender-builder relationships or these lender-agent relationships where they make you use their lender or they make you at least apply for the loan through their lender. Those are problematic. Having attorneys talking about that nationwide. There's actually a lawsuit in Virginia about it. Bogus schemes where these closing attorneys are sharing title insurance with brokerages. You know, and I know that the only reason a real estate closing attorney would ever share their compensation, their title insurance, is to get referrals. There is no other reason on God's green earth that you'll ever convince anybody that the real estate attorney, out of the goodness of their heart, just wants to give you half of their real estate title insurance commissions. The broker ain't doing shit, guys. The broker's not doing any title review. They're not title searching. They're not taking on any of the underwriting roles and responsibilities or obligations. They're doing nothing except sharing in money. It's complete referral. Y'all know it. I know it. It's a RESPA. It's a bar issue, but we want to continue to stick like it's not a thing. It is a thing, and we all know it. And it's going to eventually come back where I'll be able to sit here and say, told you so. But maybe I might have missed the biggest threat of all. And that biggest threat has been under our nose for many years. This practice is so wrought with conflict, so wrought with legal issues, it should not exist anywhere in this country. I'm talking about dual agency. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows that dual agency is a huge problem. If we want to be honest with ourselves and really look at it, I don't see how anybody can argue that dual agency is ever good for the consumer. A very rare case is it good. Maybe where two parties know each other and they just need you to help facilitate the transaction. That's probably about it. I don't know how this relic of real estate has survived all of these years. I mean, I can't believe this didn't go away in the 90s when we got seller disclosure. That would have been a good time to get rid of it at that time. How it's still a thing in this highly litigious real estate consumer rights world, I don't know. It will, at some point, in my opinion, rise up and make Sitzer Burnett look nothing. 5 years, 7 years, however long it takes, I don't know how it's going to survive in light of Sitzer Burnett. According to the Consumer Federation of America, the CFA, around 10 to 20% of all home sales involve one agent representing both the buyer and the seller. That's mind-blowing that almost 20% of our transactions in the United States are done through dual agency. And how that is not seen as a huge conflict of interest is beyond me. CARE, which is the Consumer Advocates in American Real Estate, they don't like it either. So who's CARE? CARE is a nonprofit charity, but their whole goal is to expose conflict of interest in real estate and provide information and resources to consumers. So their whole existence is trying to find things that they believe you do that are wrong. They're known for helping consumers navigate issues, particularly this NAR settlement. Been around since 2008, so it's not some new organization. It is a 501c3, so it's a nonprofit. They're not out there trying to make money off of this. But here's some of the articles that they have published about dual agency over the years. Never agree to dual agency. Dual agency is a bait and switch. Dual agency is the biggest consumer scam in real estate. HUD bans dual agency on short sales, then capitulates under NAR's pressure. Big real estate firms are addicted to dual agency double commissions. Get the idea yet? I mean, y'all see that? You got two large consumer rights advocacy groups that are actively campaigning against this at the same time that multiple states in this country are banning it, but not South Carolina. Why would South Carolina ever lead on anything, right? But that's a problem when you have major consumer rights advocacy groups that are nonprofits actively campaigning, saying it's a bait and switch, it's a scam, but yet we're continuing to do dual agency nationwide and in South Carolina, except for 9 states who have seen the light. Let's backtrack here for a few minutes and let's discuss dual agency as a concept. What is dual agency? Well, the FloridaRealtyMarketplace.com did a pretty good job of explaining it. They said dual agency occurs when a single real estate agent represents both the buyer and the seller in the transaction. One agent handles all aspects of the sale for both parties, working to facilitate the deal. That's probably a good word. They're a facilitator. They're a mediator. They're not an advisor. They're not a counselor. All they are is a mediator. They're providing nothing in the transaction in terms of advice or counsel. So while this might sound convenient, it creates a significant conflict of interest, according to Florida Realty Marketplace. Here's their quote. The problem with dual agency lies in the fact that a real estate agent's job is to advocate for their client. But when one agent represents both sides, they can't fully service or serve the interest of either party. Imagine trying to negotiate a price. How can one person fairly represent both buyer, who wants the lowest price possible, and the seller who wants the highest? The answer is you can't, particularly in South Carolina, where you can't provide advice, counsel, or advocacy. You are basically transferring information from one party to the other. You're not making any suggestions as to price. So why did they hire you? That's the biggest question. If they can't receive the services that designate you as a real estate agent and them as a client, why in the world do they need you? So let's look at South Carolina law. What does it say about dual agency? Under 40573016, dual agency is defined as a form of agency in which a real estate brokerage firm with 2 clients in the same transaction gives limited agency services. And boy, are those agency services limited, as in they really don't exist. You're not really providing any agency services. The limited services is almost the same as you would give any consumer. Fair dealing, good faith, you're not going to lie to them, providing them information. That's it. I mean, you're not giving them advice, counsel, and advocacy, which is what you do with client services. At 4057.350, it says the following permissible brokerage relationships a real estate brokerage firm may establish: seller agency, buyer agency, disclosed dual agency, designated agency, and transaction brokerage. It is allowed currently in South Carolina that you do disclose dual agency. Please do not call over to SCR and ask to speak to Nick or Austin saying Gary said that dual agency is illegal. I have not said that it is illegal in South Carolina. In fact, I'm saying it is legal in South Carolina, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And whether it's legal or not, you shouldn't be participating in it. And I'm going to tell you how not to participate in it in just a few minutes. Throughout the statute, you also can find other references to disclosed dual agency. Under 350I1, it says a real estate brokerage firm may act as a disclosed dual agent only with the prior informed and written consent of all the parties. So at least in South Carolina, they recognize that somebody's got to consent to this. Got to be written consent. It's got to be informed. I'm not sure how good the word informed is here, because what does it mean to be informed? Well, informed means that they have all the facts before them. So, for example, if you're asking me to do dual agency, you've got to tell me who the other side is, because if it's your sister, perhaps I'm less likely to consent to dual agency than if it's some client you've never met who talked to you on the phone 2 or 3 times. But you got to give me information so I can make informed consent. Consent's presumed if I've signed the dual agency agreement that the commission creates. The agreement must specify the transaction, the names of the parties, the consent agreement, and so forth. And it must state that in acting as a dual agent, the brokerage firm represents clients whose interests may be adverse and that agency duties are limited, as in, again, not really existing. The supervised licensee of the real estate brokerage firm may disclose information gained from one party to the other if the information is relevant to the transaction, except, which is a big except, the willingness or ability of the seller or the buyer to accept or pay more or less for the property, any confidential negotiating strategies, motivations of the seller to sell, or the motivations for the buyer to buy. Then there's several explanations in the statute that kind of shed a little bit more light on dual agency. For example, a broker in charge and supervised licensee in one office of a real estate brokerage firm may conduct business with a client of another office of the same real estate brokerage firm as a customer or client without creating dual agency, but that's so long as the branch office each has a separate broker in charge and does not share the same supervised licensees. Then there's this: in a transaction where both buyer and seller are represented by designated agency, the broker in charge is acting as dual agent, but they don't have to get a dual agency agreement signed under this provision. If a buyer, client, or a real estate brokerage firm wants to view or make an offer to purchase a property owned by a seller client being represented by the same supervised licensee, the real estate brokerage firm must act as a dual agent, and so forth. So throughout the statute, you will find examples like that giving us a little bit more information. Well, according to homelight.com, very good website that I go to frequently, the National Association of Realtors has opted to remain neutral, to take a neutral stance, neither promoting nor disagreeing with dual agency relationship. I understand them taking a neutral position, but at some point, after you write a $400 million check, you think you would have some type of comment or stance on something that could get you writing another check. And this is where I fear this will be writing another check in 5 to 7 years. But proponents of dual agency, they disagree with me on this. They say dual agency is not a problem. They believe that one agent managing a transaction means that there's less back and forth. It's faster communication, potential faster closing. You know what we didn't see here is that anywhere that mentions that that was a service that both the buyer and the seller wanted in the first place, nor do you see anything in here that the buyer might pay more, the seller might get less for the property. So it's all about speed. While speed's important in a real estate transaction, it's not the only thing. Having it be done correctly, legally, and ethically are big factors for people as well. And then obviously they try to claim that some brokers recognize they're not splitting their commission. They may agree to reduce their fee and save money. I find that hard to believe, since we're trying to go away from clear cooperation right now and taking all of these listings and keeping them in-house, which for the sole purpose is to get both sides of the commission under the guise of customer choice. But, and this is a baby got back but, 9 states have already recognized that this is a problem. So when 9 states say it is inherently bad, what does that say about the other 41? Does it say that they're just wrong? They don't care. They're late to the game. What does it say about those 41? How can the other 41 say, no, it's perfectly fine, no problems here, no issues at all, when 9 relatively reasonable states have come out and said, no, this is a problem? We're not talking the Californias of the world. We're talking about reasonable states. And we'll talk about that in a minute. These are states where dual agency is now illegal because, according to these states, it creates a conflict of interest, as they believe an agent cannot fully represent both the buyer and the seller equally in the same transaction. And I don't believe they can either. Alaska, Colorado, Florida, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Vermont, Wyoming, all have decided that dual agency is illegal. We're talking reasonable states, states like Oklahoma, Kansas. We're not talking the crazy states. We should step up and listen to this. Even the UK has banned dual agency for its members since 2018, which is very interesting because all the proponents that are trying to get rid of clear cooperation keep saying we need to go to the European model. Well, if we go to the European UK model, this would cut against you, because in order to do what they want to do by getting rid of clear cooperation, which is in-house listings and trying to get both sides of the transaction via dual agency, the UK has banned dual agency. So that kind of cuts against your whole argument. But even in states where dual agency is allowed, it is important to note that dual agency has to be disclosed. Real estate license law in most states prohibit licensees for acting as undisclosed dual agents, according to NAR's Agent Guide on Agency. NAR requires its realtors, members, per the Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice, to disclose dual agency relationships to buyers and agents. So what buyers and sellers. So what we're looking at here is none that have outlawed it, and pretty much everybody else is requiring some kind of disclosure. So the question is this: does the consumer really understand the disclosure? Do they really understand dual agency and what they're giving up? Is the disclosure even being explained to the consumer, or is it just being asked to be signed? I know you will say, yes, we explain it in detail. It's clear as it can be, and everybody who signs it understands. You and I know that is not true. We both know that's not true. But you also have to understand that these are the clients, the same types of clients who say now they didn't understand what cooperative compensation was to the MLS and how it supposedly damaged them. These are the same ones who willingly signed up for cooperative compensation. But now somehow it's the craziest thing. No one ever knew what we were doing for generations, and you just pulled the wool over everybody else. These are the same one who took $418 million off the Realtors Association and hundreds of millions of dollars off of other brokerage. You just can't wrap this crap sandwich up and then try to sell it to somebody. Reality no longer matters anymore in real estate. It doesn't. Every time I speak at one of these Realtor Association events, at least one or two agents want to argue with me about how we need to go back to the way it was. We need to have drop-down box for concessions. Broker to broker compensation is not wrong. We do it right. We're not greedy. Agents aren't bad people. They need to quit it with all this stuff. It doesn't matter whether you're right or not, guys. That ship has sailed. The genie is out of the bottle. It doesn't matter, because you don't have to convince me. You don't have to convince each other that you're wonderful people and you do everything legally and ethically. You have to convince the jury. You have to convince people out there who already don't trust you any more than they trust lawyers or used car salesmen. We saw that in Sitzer Burnett with a $1.5 billion verdict. They didn't get the MLS cooperative compensation because they didn't want to understand it. They wanted to punish real estate, and that's what they did. So why did states like Florida simply outlaw dual agency? Well, go back to floridamarketplace.com. This is what you find. Florida has taken a firm stance against dual agency, making it illegal to ensure that buyers and sellers receive the representation they deserve. The primary reason is conflict of interest. Here's that word again, conflict of interest. When an agent represents both parties, it becomes impossible for them to fully advocate for either side without compromising their duties to the other. Can't even do it in South Carolina. You cannot advocate for either party when you're under dual agency. In Florida, real estate agents are bound by fiduciary duties. Well, so are you in South Carolina, which means they are legally obligated to act in the best interest of their clients. So are you in South Carolina. When representing both buyer and seller, it becomes impossible for an agent to fulfill these duties without a conflict. He's absolutely correct. For this reason, Florida law prohibits dual agency and requires agents to either work as transaction brokers or represent only one party in a single agency capacity. Yeah, 100%. Why is that not the same in South Carolina? Why is that not the same in the entire country? Why do we feel we need to represent both parties? Particularly post-Sitzer Burnett has nothing to do with commission. Back in those days, I could see it as a commission issue. If you represented both sides, you were guaranteed to get paid both sides of the commission. But Sitzer Burnett, commissions are all negotiated now between the parties and the agent, and they're also negotiated between the parties as to who's going to pay whose. So I don't even know why we need it now. I think it's kind of it's lost its usefulness. While fiduciary duties certainly are a big part of the story for me, because I do believe in your fiduciary duty as an agent, for me, it's more than that. Here's where I go at it. Why do consumers even need a real estate agent? I have argued since Sitzer Burnett, it is to assist the consumer in navigating the transaction, navigating them from point A to point B. You're not the gatekeeper of information anymore. You're not the big advisor in terms of I know all the big stuff that you don't know, because everybody has the internet. Everybody can find anything, and they go to ChatGPT and get advice all they want now. So your job is to help navigate somebody from I want to buy a house to closing. I want to list my house through closing and beyond. That is your job. You're to navigate the transaction, because buying real estate is not easy. It's not like buying a car. It's not like going down to your local Mercedes-Benz dealership and buying a car. It's a fairly easy process to buy a car. Buying a house includes loans, title, inspections, diligence, tracks, all kind of things that you need somebody to help navigate you through that process. It takes somebody with knowledge who can assist the consumer. The biggest difference in South Carolina is that we have customer service and client service. And when you look at the client service, the big factor there that makes people want to have client service over customer service is the ability for you to give advice, the ability for you to advocate for somebody and give them counsel. Those are all client service level offerings that you cannot give if you do not have client service agency signed in writing. That's what a client or consumer expects from you when they engage you in a client relationship. but yet you can't provide these in dual agency. So your whole basis of getting somebody to sign up with you in a client relationship is over a customer relationship is because I can advise you, I can give you counsel, I can advocate you, I can help navigate you through this whole transaction. But then when an offer comes in from one of your clients, it's like, never mind all that. None of that really matters now. I don't need to give you advice. I don't need to advocate for you. I don't need to give you counsel. I don't need to give you any of the things that I told you were very important to you that you needed to hire me for. Forget I said all those things so that I can get both sides of this transaction. Question would be, why does the consumer need you when you're going to continue to erode your worth? It doesn't make any sense. So I asked our friends at ChatGTP, what's the problem with doing dual agency? This is what ChatGTP said. The core reason some states ban dual agency is the inherent conflict of interest that arises when a single real estate agent or broker represents both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. A real estate agent has a fiduciary duty to the client, meaning they are legally and ethically obligated to act in that client's best financial interest. Think about it in these terms. In a traditional real estate transaction, the seller's agent works to get the highest price while the buyer agent works to get the lowest price. A dual agent cannot simultaneously fill these competing duties for both parties. No, you can't. It's against the law. It's absolutely against the law. ChatGTP nailed it there and gave you absolutely the reason. They went on to give us some other reason. The conflicts of interest is fundamentally at odds between the buyer and the seller. There's a loyalty divide. Again, I don't know as human beings how you can equally represent people and not take sides. I mean, everybody's got their favorite child. Come on, you know you do. I mean, the question is, were you your mother's favorite child or was your sibling? Got to think about that for a minute. Compromise negotiations. You cannot give best advice because you can't give any advice on how to negotiate. That's one of the main reasons I'd want to hire an agent is to help negotiate it because I don't like negotiating these transactions. I wouldn't know how to do it. You're trained in it, so you do it. Now you can't. Violation of fiduciary duties of loyalty, obedience, confidentiality. Don't have all of that. You have the risk of misconduct in lawsuits. Parties feels they weren't fairly represented. You made all these promises of advocacy and counsel and advice, but yet now you're not giving them. But yet you haven't signed some document saying they fully understood that. They're going to say they didn't understand it. You didn't explain it. Don't care how many times they signed the document. And then they lack the dedicated advocacy that they thought they were getting from you. All that points to lawsuits. But at this point, I think you're thinking to yourself, well, yeah, I've heard all this, Gary. I've heard this all before. Why is this different now? Because the world changed in August 2024. The real estate world is not the same anymore. Sitzer put a target on the industry. It showed that massive changes in the industry can and will take place, and that it will not completely destroy the industry when they implement these changes, which they consider, quote unquote, consumer friendly. Trial lawyers are not going to sit here and watch Michael Ketchmark make close to $1 billion in attorney fees and say, oh, well, missed my chance. No, they are looking for other routes. And when you have leading consumer advocacy groups out there saying that dual agency is worst thing in the world, post-Sitzer Burnett, guess what? They read these articles and they think to themselves, there you go. That's where I'm going to go. It's a good article written by Sold Nest. It's called Dual Agency, What Real Estate Agents Won't Tell You. It says the seller and buyer share the same real estate agent in a dual agency arrangement. Sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. I mean, that's what they call it, a disaster waiting to happen because buyer and seller are represented by the same real estate agent in the transaction. And what they say is, in most cases, it is. Many real estate agents won't tell you why, especially those who have a history of acting as dual agents, but I will. And here's what he says. I highlight this and underline this and bold it. It's critical to remember that the higher commission is the reason why a real estate agent is the one who benefits most from a dual agency sale. So there's their whole argument. You're benefiting because you're greedy. Goes back to what I said earlier. Reality doesn't matter in these lawsuits anymore. It's what they spend to the jury and what the jury's going to buy. And believe me, they're already believing that real estate agents are greedy. No, you're not. I'm not saying you are. I disagree with this, but this is what they are saying. He goes on to say that dual agency is an open invitation for a real estate agent to put the seller and buyer's best interest below their own. And then he ends his article by saying, and this is why being swindled by a dual agent ranks on our list of shady tactics to watch out for with real estate agents. And he's a real estate agent who wrote the article, and he's calling dual agency a swindling, a shady tactic. A real estate agent saying that. Don't you think that might be read to a jury? And then there's this. On CARE's website, they actually are now promoting real estate agents and title companies that don't practice dual agency or have affiliated agreements. They actually have boxes there that says agent who only represents buyers and never engage in dual agency. You can click that box. And then they have one for title companies that are not affiliated with realtors, builders, lenders, or you have one for attorneys who are not affiliated with realtors, builders, or lenders. Making decision-making and prices that are not inappropriately influenced. So this consumer advocacy group is flat out saying that when you have these arrangements for title, have these arrangements for mortgage, you have dual agency, it's raising prices for the consumer. And that's why CARE has taken the position that dual agency should be banned nationwide, because it results in the abandonment, is the word they use, of the client when they need their agent the most. There's another article that we found on CARE that says never agree to dual agency. Dual agency means serving two masters. No other profession is permitted to routinely engage in the practice that most professionals feel should be banned. And the real estate agents who are perhaps the least qualified to handle this conflict, they are getting paid twice as much for doing a tenth of the work. Consumer advocacy group arguing against you. Dual agency is a conflictive relationship which strips buyers and sellers of service to a level that can best be described as abandonment. It is illegal in every other fiduciary profession except under the most extreme circumstances. It is routinely practiced in residential real estate where there is the least amount of training. When a real estate broker engages in dual agency, they may not work to the advantage or the detriment of the buyer seller. In other words, all the reasons you hired your broker vanish without little warning. And perhaps the biggest problem with this betrayal is it usually presents itself with little warning to the client. It is a bait and switch. And here we're to tell you today that there are no benefits and that you should never agree to dual agency. It's also an article on that same website called The Advent of Dual Agency is the biggest consumer scam in real estate. They also argue that dual agency is illegal in every other profession. So what is the resolution to this matter? Well, the resolution is very simple. As an individual agent, you can decide not to do dual agency. And it doesn't matter whether your brokerage allows it or not. It doesn't matter whether South Carolina allows it or not. You can flat out decide as an individual agent, I am not going to practice dual agency because I don't think it's ethical. I don't think it should be legal. I don't think it's fair to both of my clients, and therefore I'm not going to do it. It's that simple. You as an individual agent can make this change. Not like some of the other changes we've been advocating for since it's a Burnett, which would take your brokerage or NAR to make these changes. This is a change you yourself can make as an agent. You don't need your broker's permission not to do dual agency. You just say, I'm not going to do it. Small brokers, you guys can come in and implement rules for your whole company and say, we're not going to do dual agency anymore. It's wrong, it's unethical, and we're not going to do it. It's not fair, it's a conflict of interest. In fact, over the last couple of months, I have been writing office policies for a lot of small brokerages where we've included statements that say, based on the Sitzer Burnett, we do not think that dual agency should survive. We don't think it's fair. We don't think broker-to-broker compensation should survive. Those are anti-consumer provisions that have been in our industry for years, and we're not going to do them anymore. And so a lot of small brokerages have eliminated broker-to-broker, and some of them are even eliminating dual agency, which I think we all should. Builders are even moving away from it. I've actually had a national builder call me and ask them to help write a policy where that whenever a consumer comes into their office unrepresented, that they are pushing them to buyer agents. They do not want unrepresented consumers coming into their homes because they know the risk. But you builders can do the same thing. You can tell your sales staff, we will not do dual agency. And it's very simple. When somebody comes in and they're unrepresented, they can remain in customer service. So you're the client as the builder. They are simply customers as well. And that's the same way that the resale agents can do it. When you already have a listing and a consumer wants to buy the house and they want to use you as an agent, you can tell them to go find another agent. It's safer. It's better for everybody. Or at a minimum, don't go any higher than customer service. Have transactional brokerage agreement signed and do not provide them client service. Make sure it's very clear that you're not going to provide those services. And that's what we can do today. We can commit to that ourselves without any reliance on state government to make this change. I would implore you to think this over. Listen to this podcast. Go type in, is dual agency bad, and see what the results are in Google. Ask AI to give you more reasons why you should not be doing dual agency. It is a bad practice that we've allowed in real estate for generations. And just like compensation on the MLS, it needs to stop and go away. 9 states have already recognized it as a problem. I don't understand why there are 41 others have not yet. I think they will as time goes along. All right, that's our podcast for today. I hope everybody enjoyed it and it was thought-provoking for you. If you'll please like us, share us, subscribe to us, and tell everybody else about Dishin Dirt, and come back again next week for another episode. Don't forget to send closings over to Spartanburg and our other offices. Look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good week.